Have you ever wondered what the best grocery bag is for the environment? Let's find out. When we head out to the grocery store, we try to avoid plastic packaging as much as possible. We're looking for metal, aluminum, etc. But when we get to the line, the checkout line at the end of the trip, which bag do we choose? That's what this video is about today. Okay, so like most of you, I set out on this investigation to not necessarily prove that paper bags were better than plastic, but I wanted to see what does the science say to differentiate paper, plastic, and reusable. Which one is definitely the best? So when we look at paper, it seems like a green option on the surface, right? It's recyclable, compostable, it's made from theoretically renewable resources, I say in air quotes, aka trees. Compared to other types of bags, however, they do have a high environmental cost of production. They use more water, land, and energy to produce, and obviously cutting down trees is something that we'd like to avoid where possible. Researchers at Clemson University did an in-depth life cycle analysis of each of these three types of bags, and in their study they factored in the size of the bags, how many times they are typically reused, etc. They then were able to measure the environmental impacts per shopping trip and compare across bag types. This helps control for the fact that reusable bags are used multiple times, obviously, and will stay intact, whereas single-use plastic and paper are used a few times at the very best. They found at Clemson University that when compared to single-use plastic bags, paper bags were more resource-intensive to produce. Greenhouse gas emissions released in production of paper bags is 4 times higher than that of plastic. I know, I found that surprising as well. The researchers conclude that, quote, paper bags are more detrimental to the environment in 10 of the 12 environmental impacts studied and have about 7.5 times the average environmental impacts compared to plastic bags. Interesting. Okay, so how about plastic? The plastic bag found in most grocery stores, the flimsy little rippable thing, is made from a plastic material called high-density polyethylene, or HDPE. HDPEs are the most common bag in the world, with over 100 billion used annually. With those numbers, we also need to think about where all these grocery bags will eventually end up. Plastic pollution is a huge issue, and those bags, as thin as they are, take at least 20 years to break down in the ocean, let alone a landfill. It's hundreds of years. So disposing of single-use plastic bags, especially HDPE, can be a huge problem. Plastic isn't the most valuable recyclable material. Unlike metal or glass, plastics can be reincarnated a limited number of times before it just is too costly to revive. The EPA reported that, quote, in 2014, Americans discarded about 33.6 million tons of plastic, but only 9.5% of it was recycled. 9.5%. That's really bad. So that's an ongoing issue, of course, with these. Further, most curbside pickup services do not accept plastic bags because they're known to clog machinery at recycling plants. I've toured these facilities, and they say that is the biggest problem. Most people do not take the time to recycle plastic bags because it takes some effort. I don't know if you've noticed, but you could go to the grocery store. They usually have a collection point. Target and some other stores also do. So if you want to recycle them, you really can, but it's not easy. They have to be taken to a separate drop-off location. So most people won't do that. So what happens? Plastic often ends up in our oceans, rivers, and landfills, where it takes decades or even centuries before they break up. They eventually break up into microplastics. They never go away completely, and they eventually end up in our food and water supply. We can do better at refusing, reusing, and recycling these bags. But there's such a low upfront cost that, it makes it a very popular choice for these retailers. So, despite these concerns about plastic pollution and waste management, they are, quote, by far the least costly, i.e. carry the smallest ecological footprint to produce. For a single shopping trip, plastic bags are far less resource intensive than other bag types. For a single, if you're doing One trip, discarding plastic is less resource intensive. However, over months and years of shopping trips, there comes a point where reusability may outweigh the low environmental impact of these flimsy plastic bags. So, that's the question. Do reusable bags end up being better for the environment in the long run? Let's take a look. Reusable bags are really popular now. You can find them at the checkout lane in almost any grocery store or retail store. Consumer demand for less wasteful options has encouraged many chains to sell these. They realize they can make a profit on it, so it works for them too. And the two plastic materials most commonly used in reusable bags are low-density polyethylene, LDPE, and non-woven polypropylene, NWPP. In this analysis we're looking at Clemson, the researchers determined that Americans use LDPE bags an average of 3.1 trips and use non-woven polypropylene 14.6 times. In fact, 20% of Americans reuse their NWPP bags more than 44 times. They also describe how consumers typically forget their bags over 40% of the time. Yeah, we've all been there. And then opt for paper instead of plastic. Each of these plastic types are more resource intensive to make than single-use plastic bags, but the benefits begin to outweigh the costs after what researchers call, quote, a sufficient amount of uses. So, what's the magic number of reuses to make it worth it? We don't want to use plastic bags. I hate that is the answer in the paper versus plastic argument, but for reusable LDPE, bags have a lower environmental impact than NWPP bags and are great to reuse. These are kind of the thicker plastic. Here's a picture of them. They're much more heavy duty, but still made of plastic. We all have an abundance of these bags after a trip to the mall or other traditional retailers. To have an overall environmental impact lower than paper bags, you must use these low-density polyethylene bags only 2 times. To beat out single-use plastic, be sure to use your LDPE bag at least 7 times. So low-density polyethylene bags beat paper bags in 2 trips and beat plastic bags, the HDPE, the high-density, at least 7 times. You have to use it at least 7 times. So NWPP bags are very long-lasting, more so than the LDPE, and can hold up over hundreds of uses. In order to make each bag worth its costs in production, you would need to use it a minimum of 5 times. This is enough to make NWPP a better option than paper, but it requires at least 22 uses to equal the impact of one single-use plastic bag. 22 uses. And if you'll remember, what I just quoted is that the average American uses their NWPP bag 14.6 times. So we need to get that up to 22 to outweigh the environmental costs of the single-use plastic bag. So, other types of reusable bags are popular as well. Cotton, canvas, hemp, but these bags can be incredibly costly to produce. According to Stanford Magazine, the answer depends on how faithfully you reuse them. An average cotton shopping bag would need to be reused 131 times to account for its higher impact on the production side compared to single-use plastic bags. They use a lot of land, they use a lot of pesticides, they have to be shipped around the world. It's sometimes difficult to compare these things, but 131 times is unrealistic. Unless we have a huge shift in American consumer behavior, 131 times is not going to be hit by many people. So those are a little bit more difficult than the recycled plastic bags. Lastly, both LDPE and NWPP are made from higher quality plastics than single-use plastics, providing a better opportunity to recycle the bags at the end of their useful life. These bags are typically made from number 4 or number 5 plastic that is widely accepted in regular recycling pickup. So be sure to always recycle your bags when using any type of plastic, but like I mentioned earlier, the cheap, high-density polyethylene grocery store plastic bag you have to take to a specific drop-off location versus these LDPE and NWPP bags can usually just be recycled in your curbside pickup. So, what's the verdict? Which grocery bag is best for the environment? What we can conclude from this is that it matters what type of bag you choose. Avoid paper bags and cotton-based ones, and instead opt for recycled plastic and reusable plastic bags. However, the most important thing you can do is commit to bringing your bags every time you leave the house. You have to reuse these denser materials to outweigh the very thin HDPE grocery bags. So bring your bags while shopping for more than just groceries to pick up multiple items, not just food. Take them to the department store and multiply your positive impact, right? So don't hear what I'm not saying. Single-use plastic bags are bad. They clog recycling systems. They get into our waterways. They are made from fossil fuels. They're not ideal. What is ideal is to reuse a bag enough times to make it worth it environmentally. Let's avoid the paper bag. It's just a different way to approach the problem, and it was well-meaning, but chopping down trees is something that we need to get away from. So the verdict is reusable bags used enough times is the answer. That's the best bag you can choose. Thanks so much for listening. This is the Climate Solution Center. Please hit the like and subscribe down below and help us out.